And welcome back to episode 4 of the Big Gay Overalls podcast. Firstly, I need to apologize because my goal with these was to record an episode every week. But then, just when I talked about getting uncomfortable with, maybe I was getting too vulnerable or, maybe it was easier not to record, life happened and I didn't record for 2 weeks. Incredibly busy leading up to an event that I was working on, and then I got sick after the event, which is always lovely. Got a nasty head cold, which I'm still at the tail end of, so if I'm a bit croaky, that would be why. And I know I promised in the next episode my lovely wife Sharon would be joining us. However, last week, with me sick, not recording, and now this week she's sick, so we've shared it around even though we tried not to. So that's amazing. But hopefully it took me about 4 or 5 days to bounce back. So hopefully she bounces back just as quickly and we can do that next week. Thank you again for the lovely comments and feedback from people who've listened and feel like that they're getting something from the podcast. I love that. That's why I put it out there, is that for me to get something out of, e.g. get things out of my head and into wherever and own my story and help me bit by bit. And then if someone else got something out of that, that's just an added bonus. So yay. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the labels that come with being gay, because there are so many labels and it can be really confusing and hard to navigate. You can cause offense without trying. You can be offended. And this topic came to mind because yesterday I went and got a new haircut, and, check it out. It's all very sparse, sides and back. First time I've done that. And, one of the things I was talking to my wife about as we were leaving is like, I feel like I've had a guy's haircut. Is it too much of a guy? Like, do I, and, there's so many arbitrary names for things like men's haircuts, women's haircuts. Well, it's just hair and you're getting it cut. Just because for generations it's been one way for one gender and one way for another. Like, it's very arbitrary and people tend to view it that way, like men's hairdresser, women's hairdresser. And then, so I feel a bit self-conscious with the fade or the shave, whatever it is. I don't know the technical term. I like how it feels. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the look yet, but maybe I just need to get used to it. I'll see. It was just something like I've always wanted to do, and I don't know, just decided to do it. Like, normally my wife cuts my hair and clippers my hair, and which she did a couple of days ago, which is why it's fairly short on top. Not have much hair anyway. And I had a couple of bits, that kind of seemed like one side was a little bit longer. I said, I'd just get it shaved like you do. And that's the other label. Have we become those lesbians that are twinning? No, we have not. But people would look at that and make that comment. But so she was going to get hers done, and I was just sitting there and went, oh, yeah, bugger it. I'll just get it done. A couple of things that are going to fall out from this, no doubt. No doubt. I've yet to see my mother. I'll be 50 at the end of the year. And yet I still know that my mother will talk to me like I'm a child when she sees said haircut. Over the course of this year, I've, lost a considerable amount of weight. I'm looking a lot better, looking a lot healthier. It's incredibly noticeable for those people who know me. And she's not said a word about it. And this is Mum's MO for everything. Like, this is not going to be an episode bashing Mum. We are going to get back to labels, but I guarantee you, when I see her later this week, she will not be able to hold back from saying something about my hair. She will not be able to contain it. I know she's noticed my weight loss because I see her give me the whole up, down, and, I've made comments in front of her saying, if I can elicit something back, because I know I'm no longer hanging out waiting for a validation, because I know it won't come, and that's not what she can give me, and she's not capable. So I don't wait for it anymore. I don't pin my hopes on it. It's almost like a little game now, because I know. And like, I know that she's bitten her tongue. And I don't know why she doesn't want to say anything about it, but she hasn't, because God forbid you give a person a compliment. Hello. But I know that this will be too much for her. Her tongue will bleed from biting to say something about you look like a man, or looks bloody awful, or there will be a comment. And if there's not, I will be incredibly surprised, because that's how my mother works. Is she just lives in that space of the negative. At the local show recently, I won first prize for a photo I'd taken, because the first time I'd ever entered anything like that, and had won first prize, and I was very excited because I've never won anything for creative things. And I actually said to my wife before I rang Mum to tell something else, I thought I'll tell her that I won. I said $10. Her first thing will be, what, did nobody else enter? But she surprised me. She didn't say that. She just went, oh, right. So I guess that's better, different. I don't know. But I do know this week. So if you're watching, if you're listening, stay tuned for the next episode, because I will give you an update. But I'm very confident that she will not be able to restrain herself in this instance. I just know it. And I have the pleasure of seeing her a couple of times this week. So there's only a couple of weeks between a good and bad haircut, and regardless whether I continue to maintain this or just let go or whatever, it's going to be a couple of weeks of digs. I can guarantee you. Put your house on it. You'll be a pretty safe bet. But anywho, that's a slight tangent to go on, but there will be conversations about that. But those who have complex and challenging relationships with mothers, or female figures in their lives, I'm sure you are listening to this going, I hear you. It's difficult, it's challenging, it's hard to navigate, but we do the best we can. And it used to really destroy me when I wouldn't get anything back, particularly when I see her giving the same, like giving those compliments and that positive feedback and that to my sisters. So it would always sting. It's like, why is nothing ever good enough? And Mum would always say that one of my tendencies is I'm perfectionist, which I acknowledge, and that's all cool. Her focus on her belief in that is that it was because of her father, because nothing ever made him happy, which that was a narrative. That is true. That is very true. I could do nothing that made that man happy, and that's cool. But it's actually about her as well, because nothing I do will make her happy. When I get a job, and then I go for a promotion and get one, why aren't you happy just sitting where you're at? Like, why do you have to keep wanting more? Like, nothing was ever good enough. Yet my sisters could, shit on a piece of paper and stick it to the wall, and you'd think Van Gogh had just come into our lounge room and done some art. It's essentially it. Like, everything about my sister. Oh, this one's doing that, and this one's doing. Even though I've repeatedly said, I don't want to know, I don't care, I don't have a relationship with them, I don't really care. So that's been quite challenging. And it wasn't until, with support from, my wife and therapy and those sort of things, I've been able to set up some boundaries around that. So it doesn't really knock the wind out of me. Sometimes she still can. Sometimes I still have an expectation of something. And sometimes she'll say something and I'm like, really, dude? Like, really? And just complete lack of self-awareness of things. So I've put in place a lot of boundaries so it doesn't knock the wind out of my sails as much now, which is great. But she still has it in her arsenal. But this time, like, I generally go in prepared now, knowing what's going to be said, and I can't be disappointed. So stay tuned. You'll find out. But on to the labels. So it's really interesting, like, when you are gay, like, then it's like, well, what sort of gay are you? Are you, queer, lesbian, gay, bi, pansexual, asexual, transsexual, the whole, alphabet. There's a million things, and you're expected to pick one. And so for years, the term gay was associated with men and women were lesbians. And I think I've mentioned on a previous podcast, like I've never really identified with the term lesbian. I don't like that word. I find it almost derogatory. So when I'm describing myself, I'll say gay or queer. That's, that's just who I am. If I have to define, if I have to put a label on it for being more than just me. But then even when you then filter down into, you're like, great, I'm a lesbian or I'm gay or whatever. No, that's not enough. Are you mask? Are you butch? Are you dyke? Are you hard butch? Are you soft butch? Are you femme? Are you soft femme? Are you lipstick? They're like a million things. And when you realize your identity, no one comes up to you and says, okay, great, here's your handbook and here's a reference manual. Because I've had to do a lot of Googling to figure out what was what and who was who. And not that it matters. Like, I don't feel like, I need to have a label on who I am, but it's bloody confusing when you're first navigating this space. And if you were to read and listen to some of the stuff that gets espoused in the Facebook groups, like butch or masculine women only like feminine women to date, or feminine women don't like other feminine. It's like, what? Like, isn't it about like a person is like a type? Is it like, are there rules? Like, shit, nobody told me. And I find it very conflicting to, if you are a straight woman, for example, that's who you are. Now, you might have labels based on your ethnicity or, whatever. But essentially, it's pretty straightforward. You're a straight white woman. You're a heterosexual white female. That's pretty much your tags. That's it. When we get into this space now that I'm in, it's like there are so many tags, and it's like, and that's not even getting into, the non-binary and gender fluid and all of that. Like there's a whole raft of things. But my struggle comes from, why do we as people, as humans, let's use that label, feel the need to give things a box to belong into? Because, like, I feel like that doesn't necessarily fit. Like, you could go, yep, okay, I'm lesbian, great, put me in that box. Oh, but I don't fit in this box because I don't meet these parameters. I need to go over to here and go in this box, which is just to the side. It's a slightly different shape. Like, why do we need to be in boxes at all? Why do we need boxes? Realize, for the ladies listening, no pun intended, but we do, like, as humans, we want to have things defined, and I think that's why the concept of non-binary and gender fluid and even for open relations like polyamory and pansexual and asexual, that blows people's minds, and they can't quite understand it because they're like, well, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the labels. It doesn't fit the structure. Now, don't get me wrong. I have a magic case of OCD, like the gold medal. Like, I like things to have. I like order. I like things to fit. But in this space, nothing fits, and I don't feel the need to make it fit either. Like, I can understand that whilst it might not be my personal choice or might not be something I fully can wrap my head around, I'm cool with that. Like, if you're going to identify as an orange, cool. I'll happily respect your boundaries around that. That's cool. But, generally as a species, we like things to fit the rules. There's supposed to be rules. Like, what are the rules? So when things are outside that, we get very conflicted. And I think that's where some of the, particularly for our older generations, shall we say, they are very black and white, and that's, they're doing the best they can with what they know. When you know better, you do better. But generally, they were raised, black is black, white is white, left is left, right is right, yes is yes, no is no. There's no grey, there's no nothing. And then as we've evolved and we have developed language and behaviours and patterns, um, then things got a little more, I'd like to say great, but I'm going to say rainbow, a little more rainbow. And it can be hard. And, I always treat those people with a bit of those people who don't, I try and take into account where people are coming from in their background, because they're not in 99% of the cases, they're not trying to be dickwads and be malicious. Yes, there's always that element that is. Don't get me wrong. There absolutely is. But generally, it comes from a lack of understanding. So when we don't understand, we challenge and we question rather than seeking to learn. That's not necessarily the default preposition. There was a experience my wife and I had, which at the time, as it was unfolding, we're like, this is dicey. We were visiting her mum in the nursing home, and they have these staff which are like assistants to. They're not nurses. They help the residents with stuff and help the nurses out and whatever. Anyway, this lady came in. She was an older lady, and there was a big picture above Nan's bed of like us at our wedding with Nan. We're in there chatting and we got along really well with all the staff at this facility. They were lovely, and they never once blinked an eye, at us being a married couple or anything. There's none of that. And we're sitting there chatting, and this lady comes in and she goes, "Oh, is that you in the photo? I don't even know how it come up." And we're like, "Yeah." And she was a rough old bird. She's lived a life, like, a country town stereotype, but lovely person, funny. And we said, "Yeah." And she said, "Yeah, that was our wedding like last year." And she turned around and she said, or this year, it was last year that this happened. She said, "Oh, they let people like you get married." And straight away I was like, "Whoa, this is not going to go well." And we just moved to this small rural country town, and we wondered when we moved, like, what's the level of acceptance like in the town. We'd never had a blip, like, in the couple of months we'd been there when this happened, and we're like, "Oh, is this the start of something?" And she was just very direct, and we're like, yeah, since yep, legally." She goes, "Like, proper married?" And I was like, "Yep, yep." My wife was like staying quiet, and I was like, "I'm just gonna navigate this." And I said, "Yeah, like, proper legally married." She went, "Oh, I didn't know they really let people like you get married." And I went, "Yeah, since like 2018 when we had a vote on it," which is a whole other issue of like randomness, that the whole country got to vote about whether people who are in a same-sex relationship can get married, but we'll move on from that. And I thought, has she been living under I know it's a small country town, but has she been under a rock for, 5, 6 years at that point? And she said, "Oh," "I just asked." She said, "My daughter's a lesbian, and I didn't think she'd ever be able to get married." And I'm like, well, that wasn't the next answer I was expecting. So this person who's clearly accepting of her daughter and her daughter's relationship, the biggest issue was she thought that her daughter couldn't get married, which clearly she can. And her terms of reference that she used, like "people like you," can be seen as rude or affronting. But I kind of went with that conversation, just taking it on face value. She was a little rough around the edges, and that's, it's very easy to tell when someone is addressing you and they're being maliciously a dick and a smartass, or when they're actually, that's just how they are. Not that I'm excusing rudeness or anything like that, but sometimes people have limited skills around that sort of stuff and navigating that. They just say it how it is, zero filter, zero fucks given, but they don't mean to be offensive. And so I was just taking the conversation on face value. And when she went out, we were laughing. I went, "Wow, I thought that was going to be spicy for a minute." But because it didn't fit the paradigm of, so she has her daughter, she accepts her daughter, and she was just worried her daughter could never get married should she choose. But it still came across as, if someone had have been hypersensitive, it could have come across as bigoted or, non-accepting or non-inclusive or anything like that, and just felt like awkward. I tend to take things on face value. So that's just to highlight, a little entertaining story, because we still laugh about it today, about how we thought, well, which way is this conversation going to go? Is it going to go left? Is it going to go right? Like, what's the go here? But also that, people aren't necessarily, if things don't fit the paradigm that they have, that, it should be this or that or one or the other. And even, can I say, in the relatively short time I've been involved in the LGBTQI plus community, particularly a lot of women's group, wow, there can be a lot of judgment in that community, a lot. And people will be quick to say that, the straight community is judging and condescending, but whew, there is some judgment within the community, and it seems even harsher. And I try and view those people with, compassion, take it on face value, but maybe they've not had a smooth experience. Maybe they've not had things go quite the way that they wanted them to go, and maybe they're still working through some stuff and unpacking some things, and that's okay. But wow, there is some judgment. If you, were to do a post, some people who are still married, even in a heterosexual marriage, and making decision on who they are, and still trying to find out who they are, which is a path I was on. So I get that, totally get that. But there are people who will comment saying, you shouldn't be in this group because you don't know who you are. Like, you're not with a woman, you're not seeking a woman necessarily, like today. But like, people need to find their feet. And that was a lot of experience on, there used to be a famous site over here in Australia where, it was a dating site for women called the Pink Sofa. And great name. But people would get on there, and, if someone was not fully out, or not, or, just trying to figure out like who they are, they might not even have another partner, but they're not fully out, then they'd be treated with some sort of suspicion. And why haven't you got a photo? And why aren't you showing a photo? And things like that. And I get that there's a lot of people who go into those sort of groups and apps and stuff for nefarious reasons, and they're not necessarily in it for the intent of the app, and I get that. But it's just so instant, the judgment, and harsh. And I find that really challenging. And it's like, well, you're butch. Well, what is that? Or you're mask, which is short for masculine. Well, what is that? Like, I'm me. And this is what I've said all the way through my journey. I'm just me. I'm Lisa, and that's it. Like, yes, I'm married to a woman. But beyond that, I'm just me. So yes, okay, if you need another label, I'm gay, but why then do I need to find a subset within that? And it can be really overwhelming for people who are first embarking on the journey. Like, I've been, down this road for a few years now, like fully down the road, like living my authentic life. And it's still overwhelming when you see something, you're like, what does that mean now? So I'm going to run off and do a Google and go, oh, maybe that's me. But why would I describe myself with that way when I'm just Lisa? I'm just who I am. I'm not anything apart from that. I'll enjoy the label of wife, and friend, and auntie, and all these things. But I don't think anyone who truly loves me needs me to define myself any more than that. Sharon and I were having a conversation when we were watching the Mardi Gras, because she thought she'd, oh, one day it'd be cool to go in the Mardi Gras. I said, oh yeah. I said, what banner will we march under though? So again, if we were going to find a group that we wanted to associate with so that we could go to the Mardi Gras, well, then you're going to need a label, aren't you? You're going to need to fit in this group. Like, do you ride a motorbike? Are you in Dykes on Bikes? Not necessarily. No. Okay. Are you this? Are you that? Is it leather or there's a million different things. I'm like, can I just have a banner that just says just us being us? Like, relatively normal people going about our normal lives, working in our businesses, trying to be good humans, and just being and trying not to, affect anyone else's life negatively. And it's really quite funny. And the labels, like even yesterday when we went to the hairdresser, my wife goes to this Fijian barber, lovely guy, and I hadn't had my hair cut. I went for her very first appointment with her, and I hadn't been back in ages. And I've never had my hair cut there because, like, as I said, she does it generally, or I go to my other hairdresser who will probably, again, go, what the fuck, when she sees my hair. Not in a bad way, but like, what the fuck? What'd you do? But I did have it done by a professional, so it's good. But he, like, when we finished and I got mine done, she got hers done, and we were paying up, he goes, "Are you sisters?" And she's like, kind of. I said, "No, she's my wife." And off we went on our day. Like, it didn't even enter his head that we might be a couple or anything, and that's cool. But again, it's that label, like, well, two women going to a hair appointment together, you must be related in some way. Like, are you sisters? Like, there had to be, rather than just going, I had two people come in and get a haircut today. So, I mean, this is a bit of a windy little path I've taken about the labels, but I'd be really interested for you to comment on Insta, or because I do have the Insta, the Big Gay Overalls podcast on Insta, all one word, under this episode, link about what you think about labels. Are you, have you had any funny label stories? Or your thoughts about the name. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Like, this is just me riffing on things that are in my head. And, as I said yesterday after I had my haircut, it was like, when I said, oh, it's a bit like a dude's haircut. Do I look too much like a dude now? Like, am I too manly? I'm more manly than you. I've got a manly face. And my wife's sitting there going, what the fuck are you talking about, you idiot? Like, she didn't say you idiot, but what the fuck are you talking about? Just looking at me. She says, it's not. There's not a men's or a women's haircut. It's a haircut. Like, you got a haircut. You're either happy with it or you're not. That's the story. And that's sent me down thinking about those labels. So I thought it was something interesting, because that is part of everybody's journey, is like, you got to stick a name tag on a label about who you are and where you fit in this subset of community. And I don't think I guess it's important for people to give them a sense of belonging, going, yeah, I belong with this tribe, or this is my tribe. But I think as a broad thing, like, I don't know that we need the labels. I think, we should take people on face value and let people evolve into their own story. Like, when the caterpillar goes into its cocoon, like, when it comes out, it goes, okay, I'm a yellow butterfly. I do what yellow butterflies do. It's just a butterfly. Colors it comes out completely, up to nature's whim. The same as humans. So they come out and it's just, I'm a butterfly. Cool, bro. You do you to the best of your ability. So that's my rambles this week. Sorry for missing a couple of weeks. We'll be back next week. I promise you, Sharon will be on, which will be a hugely entertaining episode. So please give me a like or subscribe if you want to find out when next episodes go live. But I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation about labels out in the broader context. So if you have anything, reach out, put it in the comments on your favorite platform, or just shoot me a message. I'm keen to see where you're at with that. All right, guys, talk soon.